We've got a really cool upgrade to the rig that we're doing, and I'm super excited about this one. But first, we got to get it out of the box. So what we have here is a 300 amp hour battery from Vatrer Power. I think that's how you pronounce it. Vatrer. Anyway, they sent me this at no charge, and all they're asking is for an honest review, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. So we're gonna talk about a few things here. We're gonna talk about the basic specs of this battery. We're gonna talk about why lithium battery in the first place, and then we're gonna go into the installation, and then we'll get this thing fully charged up. We'll do a test discharge on it, and then we'll do a final recharge. And as I go through all of this, I'm gonna keep it real, meaning I'm gonna talk about this probably in the way that most of you guys out there are gonna use this battery. I am not gonna disassemble this thing. I'm just gonna focus on how just a normal, typical, everyday RVer would use this battery. Now, if you wanna see how this battery is constructed, I'll go ahead and put a link or two down in the description area for this video that will link to other guys that have done those types of reviews on this battery. I'm not gonna do it. If you wanna see the inside of it and see what all the pieces, parts look like, again, I'll link that video down below. So let's just start this out by talking about why lithium in the first place. So there are three main reasons to go with lithium, in my mind. So first, they're much lighter than a normal lead acid battery. This 300 amp hour battery here weighs just shy of 60 pounds. And if you compare that to a normal lead acid battery, one single 100 amp hour lead acid battery could weigh up to 50, 60, and maybe even 70 pounds. So we've basically got the equivalent of three of those in this little box right here, and it only weighs just shy of 60 pounds. The second reason to go with lithium is because you get more effective capacity out of it. So for lead acid batteries, especially to maintain the long-term health of those batteries, you never want to discharge those greater than 50%, or you don't want to consistently do it. If you do it once or twice here and there, is it terrible for the overall long-term health of the battery? Probably not. But in general, 50% discharge on a lead acid battery is really all you want to do. Lithium batteries, on the other hand, you can discharge those down really all the way down to 0%. So if you've got a 100 amp hour battery, you've actually got 100 amp hours that you're working with versus the 50 amp hours that you're going to get effectively out of that lead acid battery. And then finally, the third reason I really like lithium batteries is they are maintenance free. There's enough maintenance that we have to do on these RVs. Anytime we can remove a maintenance item from our checklist, I'm good with that. So the most that you ever need to do to these things is maybe just wipe it off with a towel. But generally, for most of us, there's never a reason to do any maintenance beyond that. There's never a reason to open this battery up. So effectively, they are maintenance-free batteries. All right, so let's dive into the specs on this, or really the ones that I think are important. And as I like to do, I've got my little cheat sheet here so that I don't forget anything. So let's get right into these specs. So first of all, they say that this battery will last 5,000 cycles. That's a lot of cycles. So let's just put that into perspective. If you fully cycled this battery once every day, over the course of a year, it's 365 cycles. Do that across 10 years, that's 3,650 cycles on this battery. So this thing says it can go to 5,000. None of us are gonna do a full cycle on this battery every single day over the course of a year, let alone 10 years. So this battery is gonna last a long time. I think on their website, they say 5,000 cycles and 10 plus years. Next, how much power are we gonna get out of this battery? We said it's a 300 amp hour battery. So their website says 3,840 watt hours is what we can get out of this battery. That's quite a bit of power, and I'm going to put that into perspective here in just a little bit when I get into kind of how we are going to use this battery and what the purpose is for us. They also say that this battery can supply over 2,500 watts of power at any given time. So you got an air conditioner that you've got attached to your inverter on your RV, this battery is definitely big enough for that purpose. Next, a little bit about the BMS. It's got a 200 amp BMS on it. So basically this thing can put out right around 200 amps at any given time. And of course that BMS comes with all of the protections that you would hope it would. It's going to come with the over discharge, the overcharge. It's going to come with under voltage. It's going to come with low temperature protection. So all of those basic protections that you would find in really all of these lithium batteries, this battery has all of those. Oh, and in addition to that 200 amps worth of power that you can get out of this thing, the website also says that it will also handle up to, I believe, 500 amps for 3 seconds. So it can take a very large surge for up to 3 seconds before this battery will cut off. Next, I want to talk about the self-heating function on this battery. So it's got heating pads inside, and those things are designed and programmed to come on anytime temperature goes below 32 degrees. So at 32 degrees, this battery will kick in its self-heating function, and it will continue to heat until the temperature of the battery reaches 41 degrees. So that goes hand in hand with the cold temperature charging cutoff. So at that 32 degrees or below that 32 degrees, it will no longer charge, and that self-heating function will kick in. And then you're not able to recharge this battery again until the temperature reaches that 41 degrees. So there is going to be a band with this battery where you're not going to be able to recharge it. Now, on the discharge side of the house, you can operate this battery all the way down to, what do they say, -4 degrees, all the way up to 140 degrees. Storage on this battery, they recommend storing it anywhere between 14 and 122 degrees. And then again, the low temperature cutoff on this thing is -4 degrees. And then they say plus or minus 7.2 degrees. And then the final spec I'll talk about here, they list on their website the dimensions of this battery, and we're just gonna go ahead and measure those to see the accuracy. So they say that it's 20.5 inches wide. I'm actually getting right just shy of about 19.5 inches wide. Then it says about 10.6 inches in depth, and I'm getting right at about 10.5 inches, so that seems to be about right. And then 8.6 inches tall, and I'm getting just shy of about 8 3/4. So looks like their dimensions are pretty accurate, but again, I'm only getting, it's only about 19.25 in width. Actually, I guess if we add the handles in there, then we get, that's where we get the 20.5 inches. All right. So enough about the specs on this thing. I'm really excited to get this installed and see how it actually performs under that test discharge or that load test. Now, again, I'm gonna keep all of this very real and very relevant to how most RVers are gonna use this. So if you look at some of the other videos out there, those guys will slap just a whole bunch of load on these batteries and then obviously see at what point it shuts down. I'm not gonna put as much load, I don't think, as a lot of those guys do, because I just don't think that in general, most of us are gonna be putting that much load on these batteries when we're running on battery only. Not unless, of course, you've got several of these monsters that you can draw on all at once. Okay, enough with the specs. Let's get this thing installed. All right there, so a pretty basic swap out, really just pulling the old battery out, putting the new one back in. So pretty easy process there, nothing strange about that. While we're out here, just a couple of additional topics to cover here. So number one, I want to talk about how we use this battery in our rig specifically. So this is really just kind of our backup to our backup. If you guys have been watching our channel, you know that I use power stations as our normal backup power supply for this rig. I can supply as much power as I need with those. And then this battery is kind of the backup to the backup. And I do have a separate inverter installed for this. So basically this battery is feeding this inverter, and the only thing that's on this inverter here are all of the outlets in the RV that are on the outlet strings. And just real briefly, the reason that we've got this set up like this is because I didn't want a traditional solar setup. I really wanted to use my power stations. The problem with my power stations is it runs through a manual transfer switch, which I actually prefer, versus an automatic transfer switch. So the problem with that is if I didn't have this additional inverter in here to power up my outlets, if we lost power while we were away from the rig, basically all of my 120 volt powered stuff would just shut off. So to avoid that, I installed this inverter here. It takes care of all of the outlets inside of the rig, so it keeps our internet on, and more importantly, we've got animals in there, and we've got one of those water bowls for the animals that runs on a pump and it's filtered and everything, so if that loses power, then the animals don't have anything to drink. So we needed to make sure that if we lost power when we're not at the rig, that we had some sort of a backup to provide power to all of those things. So that's how we use our coach battery here. And I know it's probably quite a bit different than how most people use their battery, but it's the setup that we prefer. And then the last topic I want to cover here before we get to the whole discharging and then recharging it again, I want to talk about the fact that this is a smart lithium battery. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't buy one of these batteries if it wasn't smart. If I didn't have the capability of watching and seeing what's going on with this battery on my phone. Now, Vatrer has their own app. It's just called Vatrer Battery, and you can get it right out of your app store, whichever that is, Apple or Android. And it's got some pretty basic information on here. So we can see our state of charge. We can see all the different voltages and currents going on inside of this battery, how much power it's either consuming or supplying. We're sitting at about 57% charge, and I'm gonna need to get this thing fully charged up before we can do that test discharge on it. So I'm gonna go do other things in the meantime. Once this thing gets fully charged, I'm gonna do kind of a modified test discharge on this thing. So like I said before, I really wanna keep this real and applicable to how I think most people are gonna use this battery. Most people are not just gonna drain the crap out of this battery all at once. So what I wanna do is get this battery supporting just a few loads in the rig and then see how long that lasts before the battery cuts out. All right, so not without some difficulty, we've got this test discharge going. If you want to know what that difficulty is, you're gonna have to come back and watch us probably next week when I kind of explain the whole thing there. But anyway, as you can see here, what I've got, I just want to explain this, why we're seeing two batteries here. So this is the new Vatrer battery down here, the 300 amp hour lithium battery. This is my old battery, and we're not gonna talk about the brand on that or anything, but basically the reason I've got both of them here is the Vatrer battery is connected just by itself up to this inverter. So it's not connected up to the coach 12 volt DC system. So I wanted to get it off of the 12 volt DC system in the coach because the converter and how all that works together, it wasn't getting really what I wanted. I wasn't getting this battery truly isolated by itself to do this discharge. So the old battery is online with the coach itself, and the converter, the Vatrer, is all by itself. Obviously, we started this out with a full battery on this Vatrer, and it's already down to about 98% here, about 293 amp hours to go. And I'm discharging it. It's somewhere between 11 and 1200, 1150, 1200 watts on this thing. So when I initially brought it online, I really didn't have anything on it. Then I started up our dehumidifier inside of the rig that added about 300 watts. And then I started up a portable space heater inside. So altogether that's given us about 1150 watts. So based on that 1150 to 1200 watts, we should be looking somewhere between 3 to 3.5 hours before this battery shuts down on the low voltage. So we'll see what happens there. And once we get there, we'll take a look at that final data. All right, so we're all done with that test discharge. It's actually the next morning here. It was a little late last night for filming. It was a little dark, but I just wanted to go over the results here. So we started this test yesterday at about 4:41 in the afternoon. And you can see here, we started out at 100% charge. And I initially was pulling about 176 watts of power off of here. Again, we were just powering our outlets in the RV. And then about a minute later, at 4:42, I started up our dehumidifier in the rig, and that brought us up to about 500 watts. And then about a minute later, I started up that portable space heater. I just had it on low setting, and that brought us up to about 1170 watts here. And so just to point out, going forward here, the total draw on this battery over the whole discharge was probably averaged about 1200 watts. So some of these screenshots, you'll see it less than 1200, you'll see it a little bit over 1200, but I'm just gonna take the average of about 1200 watts, and that was really based on me just keeping an eye on this the whole time. The next check-in point here, I got right at an hour later from starting the test discharge, and you can see we're at about 69% on this thing, pulling about 1260 watts. I missed my hour 2 check-in a little bit, so I got it at about the hour and 16 minute point here, and we're looking at about 29% state of charge here, and again pulling just shy of 1200 watts. And then at the 3 hour point, we're down to about 6%, still pulling just shy of 1200 watts. And then finally, about 3 hours and 10 minutes into this discharge, the app actually indicated 0% state of charge, but it was still pulling about 1200 watts, and it continued to pull 1200 watts until about 9 minutes later. So right at 8 o'clock is when this whole thing just kind of shut down. So we got, what is that, 3 hours and 19 minutes at about 1200 watts of discharge. So if we just do the quick math on this, this thing is rated at 3,840 watt hours. So if I just bring up my calculator here and I take that 3,840, divide that by the 1200 watts that I was discharging it at, that gives us about 3.2 hours. So what is that, 3 hours and 12 minutes, and I got about 3 hours and 19 minutes on it. So everything checks. This thing passed its test discharge, and then obviously I didn't have any problems getting this thing charged back up to 100%. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for this review video. Everything kind of checks with chart here on this battery. I've had no issues with it. Obviously it's an easy installation. It's just a 1-for-1 swap. Nothing terribly difficult about that. And again, if you want to see more about how this battery is actually constructed on the inside, I'll go ahead and link a video down in the description area to another guy who did exactly that. It's a really good video, and if you're really into that kind of stuff, you'll be able to see exactly what's in this thing and how it's constructed. So again, that's going to wrap it up for this video. As always, I hope you got something out of this. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and then while you're down there, make sure you hit the bell button so you get notified of all of our future videos.